So if you've been following this playlist so far and you reached this video, congratulations. This is the last video of the playlist. When I started, I didn't realize how long this was going to end up becoming, and as I was recording, I realized this was not going to fit in a single video, but yeah, we're almost to the finish line. And of course, there are some things that I didn't cover in this playlist, particularly OAuth authentication or more details into different kind of paging, so we'll see how the reception is, and I might make some more videos on APIs if it's something that people are interested in. So anyways, let's get into dynamic request keys. So basically this is where we ended up last video, where we brought in the boys table and the girls table using a static request key. You would input in that static request key as a parameter. So let's assume that the request key that we use expires after a certain time frame, and the only way to get the most up-to-date request key is to do the authentication call. So we already did that previously where we did the auth call. So if you do localhost auth and you pass in this office ID and app ID, you would get the most up-to-date request key, and you want to input this request key onto the data call. So how do we do that? As usual, we'll start off with mQuery first, and then we'll move on to Power Query. So this is our mQuery code so far, where we explicitly mention this request key, but we want to make this part a variable now, and we want to add another function in this query where it will generate the most up-to-date request key. So how do we do that? So let's get started. Hit cancel here. I'm going to create a new blank query, or actually it might be easier to create a web query in this scenario. And in this web query, I'm just going to write the authentication call. So HTTP localhost port 80 auth office ID is, sorry, I have to give a question mark here. Office ID is 123456, and my app ID is 654321. And if I pass that hyperlink in, it is going to give me the most up-to-date request key. So there we go. So when you're working with a production API, you're going to see a bunch of other things here. It's going to say expiring in 60 minutes. This is the request key and so on. So you want to take the request key that you're seeing, right click on that particular cell and hit drill down. And now you can see I get the pure text version of my request key. If I go down to advanced editor, I can sort of see the last step of my transformation, which is request keys equals to this step, where it's basically drilling down to that plain text. So this in request key is basically saying that this step is giving you the plain text version of the request key. So I'm going to take this entire function up here. I'm going to copy it and go back to my initial query, and I'm going to merge that query in there. So I'm going to put this up on top. I'm going to get rid of this. So basically I have to name this function. So you can call it GAT for get access token, or GRK for get request key, whatever you like. I think GAT sounds nice, but you be you. And then I'm going to hit a comma here to show that uh, this function has ended. So this part of it is my GAT function, and the output of my GAT function is request key. So now I want to take that request key output that I got and input it here. So I'm going to get rid of this key here, and then I'm going to write request, or sorry, the correct syntax would be like that hash and request underscore, or sorry, your function that you called. So GAT. So that's the syntax you'd want to use to get your access token. And let's see, there is an error here. Let's see if we can figure this piece out. So I need to have a let function here. So then I'm considering this entire function as part of cat. And then you have offset loop. And then you have the sourceless generate. So if I hit done right now, let's see. So cat wasn't recognized. Let's see where we went wrong. So it's just the parenthesis should be here, and then the open bracket and close bracket. So this is the output of the function essentially. So now if I hit done, it's going to ask me whether I want anonymous authentication, ignore privacy levels. This is because you're using two different endpoints. You're using the auth endpoint and you're using the boys endpoint, and you're merging them together. So you would want to ignore privacy levels in this scenario. And you got this running. Perfect. So now, next bit of work. We need to get this onto the SDK. So, what did we add? We added this piece of code, and then we changed our headers to have the get access token function here rather than the static request key. So let's copy this. So for my get boys table, I'm going to paste this down here, get rid of the set function here. And over here, I'm going to call my get function. I'm going to do the same thing for boys, sorry, for girls, where I'm going to paste my get function. So get rid of this let and paste that in. Call my get output here. And then I'm going to build this. Actually, before I build that, I need to get rid of key as text, and I need to mention Office ID and App ID. So first of all, this auth call over here, Office ID should be equal to a dynamic value. So this should be Office ID, and this should be App ID. And I'm going to pass these two as text. So basically, I'm not passing in key anymore. I'm passing in App ID, and I'm passing in Office ID. Or rather, Office ID comes in first. Office ID as text and App ID as text. So I'm going to take this, replace it here. Place it here. Sorry. So this would be Office ID as text, App ID as text. So this would be three inputs, Office ID as text, App ID as text. This would be Office ID and App ID, so we want three inputs there. This would be URL, Office ID, and App ID. URL, Office ID, and App ID. And we should be good to go from there. So let's build this. So if you've noticed, for whatever reason, the SDK says that there's an error here, but it does build. And now that we have this built, let's just try it out. So if you go desktop, connector tutorial, or wherever the working directory of your API is, you take that mess file and you want to replace that mess file as usual in your documents for RBI desktop, custom connectors, and replace. Okay, so now moment of truth. Get rid of these old outputs from the SDK. New, use the connector that we just built. All right, now we got 3 inputs. I'm gonna put in my URL. Office ID is 1234556. And my app ID is 6543321. And hit OK. Hit connect. There we go. So now what we're doing is we're taking the Office ID, we're taking the app ID, we're taking the URL, and we're doing that and we're building out a dynamic request key. So you're using the Office ID and the app ID to generate the request key in the backend, and then that request key is being inputted onto your data call, and then your data call is happening. So that's that so far. Yeah, I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions.